G'day! Have you ever wanted to read more Australian writers? Immersing yourself in a new world of literature, whether you're an Australian yourself, you live overseas, or you're well versed in Australian authors, here are 5 must-read novels from Australian writers that you need to check out. My name's Tim, I'm an Australian writer, educator, and creator, and today I'd like to go over the 5 books that I think are must-read Australian novels. Welcome if you're new here. I appreciate you taking the time. Before I get started, what I want to say more than anything is that this list is subjective. There are hundreds of other novelists, writers, creators out of Australia that I could recommend right now, and I am only choosing 5. And they're the 5 that I think are some of the most impactful for myself personally, but this list is subjective. I could wake up tomorrow and it could be a completely different list. I will also say that Australian writing is absolutely phenomenal at the moment, and I am biased, but I think there are some incredible writers and incredible novelists putting out work in Australia right now, and that is why I'm making this video. I think you should check them out. I know there are some incredible people in the scene writing incredible pieces of work and pushing the boundaries, and that is why I want to share some of those with you today. Without further ado, I am going to lead with Richard Flanagan, A Narrow Road to the Deep North. You could pick any one of his novels on this list for me. How Flanagan writes, how Flanagan creates, how he puts pen to page almost can't be explained, but I am going to try. It's got this undertone of this like harrowing, beautiful essence of Australian culture, but Australian thinking and creation, as well as really using landscape and ideas and really trying to push the needle of making his writing mean something. All of Flanagan's work is this heavy-hitting, deep interpretation and reflection on thinking and work and life and how we exist amongst it. He is one of the deepest thinkers while also putting it simply on a page for us to understand. And there is something incredibly dauntingly beautiful about all of that. In August of 1943, in the despair of a Japanese POW camp, an Australian surgeon entangled in a love affair struggles to keep his men alive. This is a story about love, death, war, truth, and loss in its purest form, and it draws from elements of Richard Flanagan's father's life being in a Japanese POW camp. And it's almost like this reflection, but this like love letter to this time of his father's life. It is this really just beautiful, harrowing story that I think everyone would find value in reading regardless of where you're from. I think what Flanagan does best is almost ask the questions that need to be asked in this really simplistic way, because the questions that actually matter are the really simple questions. Are you in love? Why are you in love? Who's going to love longer? Who's going to live? And it's just, it's fantastic. You need to read it. Check it out. This is probably one of my most recommended books of all time. Second on my list today is Limberlost by Robbie Arnott. I just finished this book after not having the chance to have read it because it came out when I was overseas, and I finally had this opportunity to read this novel. And let me tell you, Robbie Arnott does this thing that just scratches at this part of your brain and brings in this heavy emotion into his stories. This follows the story of Ned over the course of a 30-year sort of journey, and it starts with this moment and this story of when he was a young boy going out on a boat on a river with his dad, taking him to the mouth of the river with his 2 brothers, and there's a whale, and it kind of stems from this really just like beautiful emotional stories center. It deals with characters going off to war. His two brothers go off to war while he stays at home when he's a young boy. And it deals with him going into fatherhood and marrying the love of his life. And it deals with loss and grief and really doesn't gloss over the gory details of life. What Robbie Arnott does almost better than anyone I've ever read is he picks up the vibrance of the landscape, but the characters and the emotions, and he almost just he just turns it up. He turns that wheel onto full vibrance. It's one of the only stories, and he's one of the only writers I've read in which you just get fully immersed into his world. You're almost picturing it as though you are the first person character in the world that he's created. And there's this level of I'm thinking about it right now, and I am on the river in the boat watching both his brothers and Ned and his father and this whale tail just ripping out of the river there. And I feel like I'm part of it. This is what Robbie Arnott does with all of his books. This is, I think, his fifth book, and I felt that way about every single book he's written. It deals with magical realism, but it deals with animals in this just beautiful way, in the way that they actually are, not the way that we would like them to be. It's the real organic aggression presentation of what the animal actually is. I just finished this and it's incredibly raw, and I'm still just being mellowed out by the beauty of what this novel was, and I couldn't help but put it on this list for you. Third up is The Wild Dark Shore by Charlotte McConaughey. On a tiny island off the coast of Tasmania, Dominic and his 3 children are the caretakers of Shearwater Island. There is a seed vault which protects all of the seeds of humanity as the water levels are rising and the temperatures are rising. And all of a sudden, one night in a storm, a woman washes up on the shore of this island, which is located in the middle of nowhere. She has come looking for her husband, who went there as a researcher for work and hasn't returned. And it is this mystery, but also just this really beautiful depiction of landscape and how we view landscapes, but also using the landscape as a character. And it really develops characters. There are multiple points of view in this novel, and I think what Charlotte McConaughey does really well is makes it feel incredibly real and incredibly authentic. As a common theme is what I probably should say, is all of these novels that I think I fall in love with from these Australian writers immerse yourself in the landscape and also the characters, and there's just an emotional element that I feel lacks in some other bits of work that really pulls me into the Australian literature scene. This might be my favourite book of 2025, and this mystery psychological thriller, but also just incredibly beautiful writing. It's a shared sentiment that I've had talking to people about this novel. But Once There Were Wolves, which I will put up on the screen here, is actually my favourite by her thus far. Fourth up is Boy Swallows Universe by Trent Dalton. I've spoken about this book several times and I can't stop. It is this emotional gut punch. It is beautiful. It is storytelling at its finest. It'll make you laugh. It'll make you cry. It will make you feel closer to yourself than you'd felt in a long time. It's Brisbane, 1985. A lost father, a mute brother, a junkie mum, and a heroin-dealing stepfather is what Eli Bell calls his family. Eli Bell is just trying to follow his heart and be a good man, but obstacles keep getting in his way. This is like memoir fiction in a strange way, because Trent Dalton bases this off his upbringing, and there are elements of this that are true, there are elements that are not entirely true, but Trent Dalton will almost pull your heart out of your chest, hold it in his 2 hands, and pump life and light and joy back into it. And I swear, Trent Dalton is one of the best in the game. But ultimately, this story is about true love, brotherhood, and the most unlikely of friendships. And the final one on my list today is Tim Winton. This is actually not the Tim Winton book I want to talk about, but it is the only one that I currently have on hand, as my entire stack is at home in Australia, but I'm going to use this as a bit of a placeholder in the meantime. I'm going to do a whole deep dive for a video on Tim Winton soon. But in the meantime, if you want writing about rugged Australian coastlines, Australian landscapes, Australian characters, and Australian thinking, reflecting, and being, Tim Winton does exactly that. You could pick any Tim Winton novel to put in here. Juice, his most recent about climate change. You could pick The Shepherd's Hut. You could pick Cloud Street. But I think the novel that I want to pick today, that I think encompasses Tim Winton the best, is Breath. I fell in love with Tim Winton almost a decade ago, and I've slowly chipped away at his catalogue since then, because it is so thought-provoking and it does cause so much internal reflection. What Tim Winton does as a writer is almost causes you to think about the unusual, but think about those really poignant, tough topics that the world doesn't want to talk about. And he filters it into his stories in this way that it lives with you and breathes with you for a long time after. Breath is a coming-of-age story narrated by paramedic Bruce Pike, looking back on the early stages of his life with his friend Lonnie. The writing of Breath is exceptional, and it immerses you in this story. You just kind of feel like you're constantly in a wave and you're surfing and you are part of that boy's coming of age story. The character is reflective and observant and takes in the details. He is learning right and wrong, and he is making the decisions himself to stand up for himself as an individual. I'm going to do a full deep dive into Tim Winton's writing in the coming weeks, but really what I wanted to just share with you now is that Tim Winton as a writer is potentially one of the people that has influenced me the most in terms of how I think, how I reflect, and how I view the world. And I think that is, for a writer to achieve to someone they've never met and someone they never know, it's probably one of the highest compliments and accomplishments. And if you read anything by Tim Winton, I think you'll understand why. Anyway, those are my 5 must-read Australian novels. Let me know if you'd like a part 2. Let me know if you enjoyed this below in the comments. I really appreciate you watching. It's incredibly enjoyable to make stuff like this, and as you can see, I'm incredibly passionate about Australian writers and Australian novels and Australian literature, and I think it's one of the best writing scenes on the planet. Anyway, here are my 5 favorites thus far. Let me know if you have any questions. I would love to help answer those below. Consider sharing it with a friend that you think might enjoy one of these books, and I will see you back here next week.